Gallagher, you smell that? Hood cologne and welfare. That's what broke smells like.
Byron Davis sat still, hands on the wheel.
I'm the newly appointed director at the Department of...
Director? Director? Boy, the only thing you're directing is a food stamp line back in whatever gutter you crawled out of.
He snapped his fingers at Gallagher.
Bag that cash. $2 grand. Probably been slanging dope all week.
Byron looked him dead in the eyes.
You're gonna regret this.
Hollister's grin vanished. He leaned in.
That a threat, boy? Say it again. I dare you.
14 years this sergeant had been ripping cash out of black drivers' hands on this highway and walking away clean. Badge on, lights flashing. Nobody ever touched him. But every debt comes due. And this one? It was already counting down. Coulter County sits along a stretch of interstate in the rural South that most people only see through a windshield. One stoplight downtown, a chicken processing plant on the east side, a gas station, a Dollar General, and 60 miles of flat, open highway where the sheriff's office runs the show. Population, 11,000. Median income, $31,000. Number of sworn deputies, 22. And out of those 22, one name came up more than any other. Sergeant Craig Hollister. 14-year veteran, head of the 3-man highway interdiction unit. Around Coulter County, Hollister was treated like a local hero. The county newspaper ran a headline once. Coulter County deputy leads state in highway seizures. There was a photo of him shaking the sheriff's hand at a town hall meeting, big smile, chest out. Every year his seizure numbers climbed. The department loved him. The sheriff personally commended him at budget meetings. On paper, Craig Hollister was the best thing that ever happened to Coulter County law enforcement. But here's what the paper never printed. Those seizure numbers, almost all of them, were cash. Not drugs, not weapons. Cash. Money taken from drivers during traffic stops. And the people he took it from? They were almost never charged with a crime. Not one conviction for every 10 seizures. The cash just disappeared. Into the county's general fund, into the system, gone. And if you asked who those drivers were, what they looked like, the answer was always the same. Pastor James Colton knew. He'd been keeping a notebook for 3 years. Every month, someone in his congregation came to him with the same story. Pulled over on the interstate, searched, cash seized. No charges, no receipt, no way to get it back. He wrote down every name, every date, every dollar amount, and he sent letters, 3 years' worth, to the county commission, to the sheriff, to anyone who would listen. Nobody listened. The letters came back stamped, received. That's it. No investigation, no follow-up, just received. One of those names in the pastor's notebook was Denise Whitmore. Denise was a registered nurse, 32 years old. She'd just finished a 12-hour overnight shift at the county hospital. On her way home, she got pulled over. Hollister said she crossed the center line. She says she didn't. He asked to search her car. She said no. He searched it anyway. In her purse, he found $1,400 in cash. She'd withdrawn it that morning from her bank. It was rent money for her mother, who lived in assisted living 2 towns over. She had the withdrawal receipt right there in the envelope with the bills. Hollister didn't care. He held up the cash, called Gallagher over and said, "Bag it, civil forfeiture." Denise started crying. She showed him the receipt. She begged him to call the bank. He told her, "If it's really yours, you can file a claim with the county." She filed. She waited 3 months. The county denied her claim. She never saw that money again. $1,400. Her mother's rent. Gone. And Denise? She was just one name in a notebook full of them. Now, while all of this was happening, while Hollister was running his highway like a toll booth and the sheriff was signing off on every seizure, there was a man driving south on a Tuesday afternoon in June. His name was Byron Davis. The narrator won't tell you yet who Byron Davis really is. Not yet. What you need to know right now is this. He was driving alone. Dark blue Chevy Tahoe. Government plates, but you'd only notice if you looked closely. He was dressed casually. Polo shirt, khakis, jazz playing low on the stereo. The car was clean. The man was calm, unhurried, like someone who knows exactly where he's going and isn't worried about getting there. He had an envelope in the center console. $2,000 in cash. He was planning to buy a piece of furniture from a private seller once he got to D.C. That's all. A man, a car, an envelope, a quiet drive through the American South. He had no idea that in less than 20 minutes, he'd be sitting on hot gravel on the side of the highway with his cash in an evidence bag and a sergeant standing over him laughing. And Hollister? Hollister had no idea that this was the last stop he'd ever make. Tuesday, 2:14 p.m., 93 degrees outside. Hollister's cruiser was parked in the highway median, engine running, a C on, radar gun pointed at southbound traffic. This was his spot. He'd been sitting here 3-4 times a week for years. Same patch of gravel, same routine. Watch the cars. Pick one. Pull it over. See what falls out. He wasn't looking for speeders. He was shopping. A dark blue Chevy Tahoe came through doing 71 in a 70 zone. 1 mile over. Tinted windows, out-of-state plates, and through the windshield, just for a second, a black man behind the wheel. Alone. That was enough. Hollister pulled out of the median, flipped his lights on, and closed the distance in about 10 seconds. The Tahoe signaled right, slowed down, and pulled onto the shoulder. Clean stop. No hesitation. No swerving. The kind of stop a person makes when they've got nothing to hide. Hollister took his time. He sat in the cruiser for a full minute, letting the driver sweat the way he always did. Then he stepped out, adjusted his belt, put on his sunglasses, walked up to the driver's side and tapped the taillight with 2 knuckles on the way past. An old-school move, dominance, marking territory. Byron Davis had both hands on the steering wheel, window already down. He spoke first. "Good afternoon, officer." Hollister didn't return the greeting, didn't even nod. Just stood there, one hand on his belt, looking down into the car like he was inspecting a trunk at a yard sale. "License, registration, proof of insurance. Where you coming from?" Byron handed everything over, calm, measured. "Virginia, heading to D.C." Hollister looked at the Virginia license, looked at Byron, looked at the car. Then he walked back to his cruiser to run the plates. This is where it should have ended. The plates came back registered to a federal government fleet, specifically the United States Department of Justice. That information was right there on Hollister's screen, black and white, Department of Justice. Any reasonable officer would have paused, would have thought twice, would have walked back to the window and said, "Sorry for the trouble, sir. Have a safe trip." Hollister didn't pause. He didn't think twice. He walked back to the window and said, "This is a government vehicle?" Byron nodded. "Yes, sir. It's assigned to my office." "And what office is that?" "I work for the Department of Justice." Hollister stared at him for a long second. Then he laughed. Not a polite laugh, a short, sharp, dismissive bark. The kind of laugh a man gives when he thinks he's being lied to by someone he's already decided is beneath him. "Department of Justice. Right." He leaned one arm on the roof. "Everybody works for somebody. Step out of the vehicle." Byron didn't move immediately. "Officer, I've provided my identification. The registration confirms this is a federal vehicle. I'd like to know why I'm being asked to—" "I said step out. Don't make me ask again." Byron stepped out, slowly, hands visible the entire time. Hollister called Gallagher over from the cruiser. "Pat him down." Gallagher hesitated, just for a half second, barely noticeable, then walked over and did what he was told. He patted Byron down, found nothing, no weapons, no contraband, nothing. But Hollister wasn't done. He nodded toward the Tahoe. "Search it." Byron's voice stayed level, quiet, the kind of quiet that a man uses when he's choosing every word very carefully. "I do not consent to a search. You have no probable cause." Hollister didn't blink. I'll decide what's probable. Step aside. Gallagher opened the passenger door. He checked the glove box, checked under the seats. Then he opened the center console. And there it was, a plain white envelope. Inside, 20 $100 bills, $2,000 cash. Gallagher held it up. Hollister took it from him, fanned the bills slowly, and smiled. That smile, witnesses would describe it later, wasn't the smile of a man doing his job. It was the smile of a man who just won a game he plays every single day. Now see, this is what I was thinking. Nice car, out-of-state plates, and a fat envelope of cash just sitting there in the console. He looked at Byron. You want to tell me where this came from? It's mine. I'm purchasing furniture when I arrive in D.C. I can show you. You can show me whatever you want at the station. Right now, this is being seized. Civil forfeiture. He turned to Gallagher. Bag it. Write it up. Gallagher pulled out an evidence bag. His hands weren't steady. He didn't look at Byron. He didn't look at Hollister either. He just did what he was told. And then came the part that, when you hear it, makes your chest tight. Hollister told Byron to sit down. Not in the cruiser, not on the bumper of the Tahoe, on the ground, on the gravel shoulder of the highway, where the rocks are sharp and the asphalt throws heat back up at you like an oven. 93 degrees, no shade. Cars blowing past at 70 miles an hour, kicking up dust and exhaust. Byron Davis, 52 years old, Georgetown law degree, 26 years in federal service, sat down on the gravel because a man with a badge told him to. And Hollister? Hollister stood over him and made a phone call. Right there, casual, laughing. Byron could hear him. Yeah, another one. $2 grand this time, easy. Another one. Like it was nothing, like Byron was nothing. Gallagher stood a few feet away. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't on the phone. He was watching. And if you'd been standing close enough, you would have seen his jaw clenching, opening, clenching again, like a man trying to swallow something that wouldn't go down. While Byron sat on that gravel, his phone started buzzing. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, 5, non-stop. Hollister glanced down at it, annoyed. Popular guy. Byron, still sitting, still calm, looked up and said, "You might want to answer that." Hollister snorted. "I don't take advice from people sitting in the dirt." He didn't answer the phone. He didn't check the plates again. He didn't ask himself why a DOJ vehicle was getting 5 consecutive incoming calls within minutes of a traffic stop. Any one of those questions might have saved his career. He didn't ask a single one. 20 minutes later, Hollister handed Byron a seizure receipt and a citation. 1 mile over the speed limit. He leaned down, close, and said, "Drive safe now, and maybe next time don't carry money you can't explain. Makes people wonder." Then he walked back to his cruiser, pulled onto the highway, and drove off. Byron sat in the Tahoe for a moment. He didn't slam the steering wheel, didn't shout, didn't speed off. He picked up his phone, looked at the 11 missed calls, and dialed one number. The call lasted less than 90 seconds. Nobody knows exactly what he said, but here's what happened next. Within the hour, 2 black Suburbans with federal plates were heading toward Coulter County at a speed that had nothing to do with the posted limit. And Sergeant Craig Hollister, still riding high from his easy $2,000 afternoon, had no idea that the last 14 years of his life were about to collapse underneath him. 31 minutes. That's all it took. 31 minutes from the moment Byron Davis hung up the phone to the moment a black Suburban with federal plates pulled into the Coulter County Sheriff's Office parking lot. No sirens, no announcement. Just 3 people stepping out in dark suits on a Tuesday afternoon in a town where nobody wears a suit for anything short of a funeral. Agent Rachel Townsend walked in first. She didn't ask for the sheriff. She didn't ask for the front desk sergeant. She asked for one person. "Sergeant Craig Hollister, is he in this building?" The desk sergeant, a 23-year-old kid who'd been on the job for 6 months, looked at the badges, looked at the suits, and picked up the phone. While that was happening, 60 miles away, Sheriff Dwight Coleman was sitting in his office finishing a pulled pork sandwich when his personal cell rang. The caller ID showed the state attorney general's office. He wiped his hands, answered. Dwight, you've got a problem.
What kind of problem?
There was a pause on the other end. The kind of pause that tells you the person on the line is choosing their words very carefully. Your sergeant, Hollister, conducted a traffic stop this afternoon on a vehicle registered to the Department of Justice. He searched the vehicle, seized cash, forced the driver out and made him sit on the roadside. Coleman's chewing slowed. Okay, and? The driver was Byron Davis. Silence. Dwight, are you there? I'm here, Byron Davis. The Byron Davis who was just confirmed as, yes, that one, the director of the FBI. The sandwich went down on the desk. Coleman's face, and this was described later by his own secretary who was standing in the doorway, went from red to white in about 2 seconds flat, like someone pulled a plug and drained the color straight out of him. He called Hollister immediately. Get back to the station, now! Hollister, on the other end, sounded confused, almost annoyed. I just cleared a stop. I'm about to run another. I don't care what you're about to do. Get back here, now! Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anyone. Hollister drove back, casually, finished his coffee on the way. He still didn't know. He walked into the station through the side entrance, same way he always did, boots scuffing the tile floor. Turned the corner and stopped. 3 people in dark suits were standing in the hallway outside the briefing room. Townsend stepped forward. Sergeant Hollister? Yeah, who's asking? She held up her credentials. FBI. I need to confirm your name and badge number. Hollister's eyes moved from the badge to her face to the 2 agents behind her. He crossed his arms, still confident, still performing. What's this about? This is about a traffic stop you conducted approximately 45 minutes ago on a vehicle registered to the United States Department of Justice. A small shift. Not fear, not yet. Calculation. You could see it happening behind his eyes. The mental math. How much trouble is this? How do I play it? Who do I call? I conduct a lot of stops. You're going to have to be more specific. The driver's name was Byron Davis. Nothing. Mr. Davis is the newly confirmed director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now the shift. The arms uncrossed. The jaw tightened. The color in his face changed. Same way Coleman's had, like a switch flipping off. Hollister opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I'm going to need to speak with my union rep. Townsend didn't blink. That's your right. But before you make that call, I'm requesting all body cam and dash cam footage from today's stop. I'm also requesting your complete activity logs for the past 12 months. Hollister looked at Coleman, who had just walked in behind him, still pale, still shaken. Sheriff, she can't just... Coleman cut him off. Give her everything. That evening, in a federal field office 40 miles from Coulter County, Byron Davis sat across from 2 agents and gave his statement. No emotion, no anger, just facts. Every word Hollister said, every gesture, the pat-down, the search, the gravel, the phone call where Hollister laughed and said, another one. And then Byron added one detail that would matter more than any other. The deputy, Gallagher, he didn't participate in the verbal abuse. He looked uncomfortable. At one point, I believe he wanted to intervene but chose not to. That single observation, calm, precise, almost clinical, cracked open a door that would eventually bring Gallagher to the other side of the table. Within 24 hours, Sergeant Craig Hollister was placed on administrative leave. His badge was collected. His service weapon was collected. His access to the station was revoked. But here's the thing. This wasn't about one stop anymore. Because the footage they pulled, it didn't just show what happened to Byron Davis. It showed everything. Now it's time to tell you who Byron Davis actually is. Not the man on the gravel. Not the man in the polo shirt and khakis listening to jazz. Not the man who sat still while a sergeant called him boy and fanned his money like a trophy. The real Byron Davis. Born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 52 years old. His father, Walter Davis, carried mail for the United States Postal Service for 31 years. His mother, Gloria, taught third grade at a public school until she retired. They raised Byron and his two younger sisters in a 3-bedroom house on a street where everybody knew everybody and nobody had much, but nobody went without. Byron was the first person in his family to go to college, full scholarship to Howard University, graduated summa cum laude, then Georgetown Law, top 10% of his class. He could have gone anywhere. Any firm in the country would have taken him. He chose the FBI. 26 years. He started as a field agent in the Atlanta office, counterterrorism, then organized crime in Chicago, then public corruption, the cases where cops, judges, and elected officials get taken down by the very system they swore to serve. He built a reputation for being the quietest person in any room and somehow always the most dangerous. Not loud, not flashy, just relentless. The kind of man who reads every document twice and remembers every word. 3 weeks before that Tuesday afternoon in Coulter County, the President of the United States stood behind a podium in the Rose Garden and announced his nomination. "It is my honor to nominate Byron Davis as the next director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The Senate confirmed him 6 days later. The vote wasn't close. Byron Davis, the man Hollister made sit on gravel, the man whose cash he stuffed into an evidence bag, the man he called Boy, was the highest-ranking law enforcement official in the United States of America. Commander of 35,000 FBI agents, supervisor of every federal investigation in the country, the man whose signature authorizes the warrants that put people like Craig Hollister behind bars. And here's the part that, when you understand it, makes every single moment of that traffic stop hit different. Byron chose to drive. He could have flown, private jet, government aircraft, motorcade, armed escort from door to door. All of it was offered. He said no to all of it. He told his wife Sharon the night before he left, "I want one last quiet drive as a regular citizen, before everything changes." He wanted to see the country he was about to serve. Not from 30,000 feet, not from behind bulletproof glass, from the ground. Diners, gas stations, small towns. The America that doesn't make the news but holds everything together. He wanted, for one last time, to be just a man in a car. And he was, in the worst possible way. The man who would oversee 35,000 federal agents was made to sit on gravel in 93-degree heat. The man whose signature authorizes federal search warrants had his car searched without one. The man who spent his career investigating corruption in law enforcement experienced it, firsthand, in real time, on camera. Let that sink in for a second. And now, here's the thing that matters most. The thing the narrator wants you to sit with. What if Byron Davis wasn't the FBI director? What if he was just a man driving home from work? A regular man with an envelope of cash and no title behind his name? Because that man exists. He exists in Denise Whitmore, who lost $1,400 and filed a claim that went nowhere. He exists in every name in Pastor Colton's notebook. He exists on every highway in this country where a badge and a uniform and a radar gun are all it takes to turn a citizen into a suspect. The only reason this story has a different ending, the only reason Hollister is sweating in a hallway right now instead of laughing in his cruiser, is because this particular black man happened to have a title that the system couldn't ignore. Take that title away, and Hollister finishes his coffee, runs another stop, and nobody ever says a word. That's not justice. That's luck. And luck is not a system. Now, back in the Coulter County Sheriff's Office, Hollister had just been told exactly who he'd pulled over. And according to 2 people who were in the room, his reaction went like this. His face went white, then red, then white again. He stood up, sat down, pushed his chair back, stood up again. He asked if it was a joke. Nobody laughed. He asked if there was some kind of mistake. Townsend told him there was no mistake. She told him that Byron Davis had given a full statement, that all body cam footage had been flagged for federal review, and that the FBI's Public Integrity Section had opened a preliminary inquiry. Hollister asked what that meant. Townsend said, "It means this isn't local anymore." He stopped talking. His union rep arrived 11 minutes later. From that point on, Hollister didn't say another word without a lawyer in the room. But his silence didn't matter, because the footage was already in federal hands. Not just the footage from Byron's stop, everything. 12 months of dash cam recordings, 12 months of body cam, 12 months of activity logs, seizure records, and incident reports. 340 traffic stops. All of them now sitting on a desk at the FBI's Public Integrity Section in Washington, D.C. The same unit, by the way, that Byron Davis used to run before he was promoted. The same unit that built its reputation on taking down dirty cops. The hunter had just become the hunted, and the person who set the trap didn't even have to try. All he had to do was drive through Coulter County on a Tuesday afternoon and let Craig Hollister be exactly who he'd always been. Captain Elaine Porter arrived in Coulter County on a Thursday morning, 2 days after the stop. She drove a state police unmarked sedan, carried a single briefcase, and brought a team of 4 investigators with her. No press conference, no statement. She checked into a motel off the highway, set up a temporary office in the back room of the county courthouse, and got to work. Porter had a reputation. 22 years in the state police, the last 9 in internal affairs. She'd taken down a narcotics unit in Memphis that had been planting evidence for 6 years. She'd investigated a sheriff in the Delta who was running an off-the-books jail for undocumented workers. She didn't grandstand. She didn't leak to reporters. She just followed the paper and let the paper do the talking. The first thing she requested was access to every piece of footage Hollister's unit had generated in the past 12 months. Dash cam, body cam, in-car audio, all of it. The sheriff's office was told to comply fully, and anyone who spoke to media before the investigation concluded would face obstruction charges. The station went quiet. Deputies walked the hallways with their eyes down. Nobody wanted to be the next name on the list. Porter's team started with the footage. 340 traffic stops in 12 months. They reviewed every single one. Not summaries, not reports. The actual video. 4 investigators in a back room, 8 hours a day, taking notes on legal pads. What they found was not complicated. It was not ambiguous. It was not open to interpretation. Of the 340 stops, 261 involved Black or Latino drivers. That's 76.8%. In a county where Black and Latino residents made up 31% of the population. Of the 79 stops involving white drivers, only 3 resulted in a vehicle search. 3 out of 79. Of the 261 stops involving Black or Latino drivers, 198 resulted in a full vehicle search. That's 75.9%, nearly every single one. 43 of those searches produced cash seizures. Total amount? $189,000. 43 seizures across 12 months, roughly 1 per week. And the drugs? The weapons? The contraband that civil forfeiture was supposedly designed to intercept? 0. Not a single drug seizure, not one weapon, not one arrest that held up in court. In fact, of the 43 people who had their cash taken, only 2 were ever formally charged with a crime. Both charges were later dropped. Hollister's unit wasn't fighting crime. It was generating revenue, and the people paying the price, almost exclusively, were Black and Latino drivers passing through a county they'd never heard of on a highway they'd never drive again. Porter laid the numbers out on a table in the courthouse and stared at them for a long time. Then she picked up the phone and called the FBI field office. "This is bigger than one stop," she said. "This is a pattern, and it goes back years." The next step was interviews, and the first person she called in was Deputy Trent Gallagher. Gallagher walked into the courthouse conference room looking like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days, because he hadn't. He sat down across from Porter and two of her investigators. He didn't bring a lawyer, which told Porter everything she needed to know about where his head was. She gave him the choice directly. No games, no small talk. Deputy Gallagher, you have two options. Option 1. You cooperate fully with this investigation. You tell us everything. What you saw, what you did, what you were told to do. In that case, you'll be treated as a witness. Option 2. You say nothing, and we investigate you as a co-conspirator in every stop, every search, and every seizure you participated in over the past 14 months. That's federal territory now. Civil rights violations under color of law. You understand what that means? Gallagher understood. He broke in under 4 minutes. What came out of his mouth over the next 2 hours was the kind of testimony that doesn't just end a career, it buries one. He described how Hollister trained him. From the first week on the interdiction unit, Hollister gave him a set of rules. Not written down, never put on paper, just spoken, casually, like tips from a senior officer. Look for dark skin and out-of-state plates. That's your combination. If the car's too nice, like a black guy driving a BMW or an Escalade, pull it. If the car's too beat up, like it's held together with duct tape, pull it. Either way, there's cash. There's always cash. Gallagher described how Hollister kept score. A personal tally, written on the inside of a manila folder he kept in his cruiser. Every seizure, every dollar amount. At the end of each month, he'd add it up and compare it to the month before. If the number went up, he was in a good mood. If it went down, he'd push harder. More stops, more searches, more pressure. It was a game. A literal, actual game. With people's rent money and grocery money and tuition money as the score. And then Gallagher said something that made one of the investigators put down her pen and just stare at him. He used to joke about it. After a seizure, he'd get back in the cruiser and say, "They never come back for it. Who's going to believe them?" And he'd laugh. Every time. Same laugh. Porter asked Gallagher why he never reported it, why he never said anything, why he went along with it for 14 months. Gallagher looked at the table. Because he told me the sheriff knew. He said Coleman signed off on everything. He said if I had a problem with it, I should find another department. And good luck getting a reference. Porter noted that down, underlined it twice. Once the investigation went public, once the local news picked it up and the story started spreading, Pastor James Colton's phone didn't stop ringing. People he hadn't heard from in months. People who'd moved away from Coulter County and never looked back. People who'd been too embarrassed or too scared or too defeated to say anything. 17 of them came forward. 17 people with stories that matched the same pattern. Pulled over for minor violations, a broken taillight, an unclear lane change, 1 mile over the speed limit. Searched without consent. Cash seized. No charges filed. No money returned. Earl Sutton, 58 years old, retired UPS driver. He'd sold his fishing boat that morning for $3,200. Cash sale. The buyer paid in hundreds. Hollister took every bill and told Earl that carrying that much cash was consistent with narcotic sales activity. Earl had never been arrested in his life. He'd been delivering packages for 34 years. Denise Whitmore, the nurse, $1,400, her mother's rent. Already told you that story. But when she gave her statement to Porter's team, she added something she hadn't told anyone before. When Hollister took the cash, she said, "That's my mother's rent money, please." And Hollister looked at her and said, "Maybe your mama should have raised you better." Denise had to stop the interview 3 times to compose herself. Marcus Green, 24, college student, $680, his textbook money for the fall semester. He was driving back to campus after working a summer landscaping job. Hollister told him, "College boys don't carry cash like this unless they're selling something." Marcus lost a semester because he couldn't afford the books. He almost didn't go back. 17 people, $189,000, and those were just the ones who came forward. While Porter's team was building the human side of the case, the FBI's forensic accountants were building the financial one. and what they found turned a civil rights investigation into a criminal theft case. The seized cash was supposed to go to the county's general fund. That's how civil forfeiture works, at least on paper. The money gets logged, deposited, and used for county operations. But when the accountants compared the total amount seized according to Hollister's own reports against the total amount deposited into the county fund, the numbers didn't match. $41,000 was missing. Gone. Not misplaced, not miscategorized. Gone. And when they pulled Craig Hollister's personal bank records, which they now had a federal warrant to do, they found a series of cash deposits spanning the same 12-month period. Small amounts, 500 here, 800 there, never more than 1,000 at a time. The kind of deposits designed to stay under the radar. The total of those personal deposits, $41,600. Hollister wasn't just enforcing a corrupt system, he was skimming off the top. He was stealing from the people he'd already stolen from. And it didn't stop with Hollister. The investigation expanded upward to Sheriff Dwight Coleman, the man who signed every seizure form, the man who approved the interdiction unit's budget, a budget that was partially funded by forfeiture proceeds, which meant the more cash Hollister seized, the more money the department had to operate. A direct financial incentive built right into the structure. Coleman had received 3 formal written complaints from Pastor Colton over 3 years. His responses, retrieved from county email servers, were identical in tone. Complaint received, handled internally, no further action required. He never opened an investigation, never reviewed the footage, never questioned why his unit's seizure numbers were climbing while conviction rates stayed at 0. He either didn't care or didn't want to know. Either way, the result was the same. The state police recommended his removal. The county commission met in an emergency session, standing room only, half the town packed into a room built for 40, and voted 4-1 to demand his resignation. Coleman resigned the next morning. No statement, no apology, just a 1-line letter and an empty desk. And finally, Hollister himself. He was brought in for a recorded interview with Porter and 2 FBI agents. His union lawyer sat beside him. Porter showed him the numbers, the racial breakdown, the seizure-to-conviction ratio, the bank deposits. She laid it all out piece by piece, like a surgeon opening a body on a table. Hollister's response: "Every stop I made was lawful. I followed department procedure. If certain vehicles fit a certain profile, that's the reality of interstate interdiction." Porter asked him to explain the racial disparity. "I stop suspicious vehicles. If those vehicles happen to be driven by certain people, that's just what the highway looks like." She asked him about the bank deposits. His lawyer intervened. "My client declines to answer." She asked him about Denise Whitmore, about Earl Sutton, about Marcus Green. "I don't recall specific stops." And then she told him. She told him that the man he stopped on Tuesday, the man he called Boy, the man whose cash he seized, the man he made sit on the ground, was the newly confirmed director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Hollister went silent. 11 seconds, the investigators counted. Then he said, "That doesn't change what I saw." Porter closed her folder. "No, but it changes what happens next." 2 weeks later, the FBI's Public Integrity Section presented its findings to a federal grand jury. The charges recommended were not small. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law, 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Wire fraud. Theft of government funds. Each one carrying years, real years, federal years, the kind of time that doesn't come with early release or good behavior discounts. Craig Hollister, 14-year veteran, local hero, the man who never got caught, was now facing federal prison. And every stop he ever made, every dollar he ever took, every name in Pastor Colton's notebook, all of it was about to come due. The indictment came down on a Monday morning. 6 counts, federal grand jury, signed, sealed, and delivered to Craig Hollister's attorney before lunch. Count 1. Deprivation of civil rights under color of law. Count 2. Same charge, separate victim. Counts 3 and 4. Wire fraud. Count 5. Theft of government funds. Count 6. Obstruction, for the cash deposits he tried to keep hidden. Hollister surrendered at the federal courthouse at 9 a.m. He came in through the back entrance, the same way defendants always do when they don't want cameras catching them walking up the front steps. It didn't matter. The cameras were at the back, too. For the first time in 14 years, Craig Hollister was on the other side of the process. Fingerprints, mugshot, personal belongings placed in a plastic bag, a number assigned where a badge used to be. The man who'd made hundreds of people stand on the side of a highway with their hands up was now standing in a booking room with his hands out, waiting to be printed. His attorney tried to fight it, filed motions to suppress the body cam footage, filed motions to challenge the scope of the investigation, filed motions to argue that the traffic stop was conducted within department guidelines. Every single motion was denied. The evidence was too deep, too wide, too documented. 340 stops on video. Gallagher's testimony, recorded, transcribed, and corroborated. Bank records, seizure receipts, 17 victim statements. And at the center of all of it, dash cam footage of a sergeant laughing while a man sat on gravel in 93-degree heat. Hollister's attorney came back to the table with one word: plea. The deal was straightforward. Plead guilty to 2 counts of civil rights violations and 1 count of theft. Drop the remaining charges. In exchange, Hollister would cooperate with the ongoing investigation into department practices and provide a full accounting of every seizure he'd conducted. He took the deal. Sentencing day. The courtroom was standing room only. Pastor Colton sat in the second row, notebook in his lap, the same one he'd been filling for 3 years. Denise Whitmore sat behind him. Earl Sutton was in the back, arms crossed, wearing the same UPS jacket he'd worn for 3 decades. Marcus Green drove 4 hours from campus to be there. The judge read the sentence. 51 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, permanent revocation of law enforcement certification, and restitution, $189,000 to be distributed to every victim identified in the investigation. Hollister stood with his hands clasped in front of him. He didn't speak. His lawyer had advised him not to, but the judge spoke directly to him anyway. Sergeant Hollister, you were entrusted with the authority of the state. You used that authority not to protect the public, but to prey on them. You targeted citizens based on the color of their skin. You took their money, you humiliated them, and you did it because you believed, correctly for 14 years, that no one would stop you. She paused. Someone stopped you. Deputy Trent Gallagher was not charged. He cooperated fully and was classified as a witness. He resigned from the sheriff's office the week before sentencing. In an interview he gave afterward, the only one he ever gave, he said this: "I should have said something the first time I saw it happen. I didn't. That's something I carry. I'll carry it for the rest of my life." He enrolled in a criminal justice reform program at the state university that fall. Sheriff Dwight Coleman's resignation stood. No criminal charges were filed against him, but his career was over. The county commission appointed an interim sheriff from outside the department, a woman named Brenda Stokes, the first black sheriff in Coulter County's history, and launched a national search for a permanent replacement. And the victims, all 17, received their money back, every dollar, with interest. Denise Whitmore got her $1,400. She cried when the check arrived, not because of the money, because someone finally said, "You were wronged." Earl Sutton got his $3,200. He didn't cash it for a week, just kept it on the kitchen table and looked at it. Marcus Green got his $680. He'd already missed the semester, but he used the money to re-enroll in the spring. He graduated the following year. And the state legislature, pressured by the case, the coverage, and a coalition of civil rights organizations passed the Coulter County Reform Act. 3 provisions: mandatory independent oversight for all civil forfeiture actions above $500, required racial impact reporting for every highway interdiction unit in the state, and automatic referral to state internal affairs whenever a unit's forfeiture to conviction ratio falls below 50%. Not perfect, not enough, but a start. 3 days after sitting on a gravel shoulder in Coulter County, Byron Davis walked into FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. Different man, same man. Suit and tie now, polished shoes. The lobby had his name on the wall, freshly engraved, gold letters on dark wood. Staff lined the hallway, agents he'd worked with for decades, new recruits who'd only seen his face on the news. They shook his hand, they nodded. Some of them didn't say anything at all, just stood there because sometimes showing up is the statement. Byron didn't give a speech that morning. He didn't reference the stop. He didn't mention Hollister's name. He sat down at his desk, opened a folder, and got to work. But within his first week, he signed one directive that nobody in the building expected. Executive Order 0914, the creation of a national task force on highway policing reform, focused specifically on racial profiling and civil forfeiture abuse on interstate corridors. No celebrity name attached, no politician's brand stamped on it. It was simply called the Highway Initiative, because it wasn't about one stop. It was about every stop, every name that never made the news, every envelope of cash that disappeared into a system designed to look the other way. When a reporter asked Byron why he created the task force, his answer was 4 sentences long. I was stopped on a highway and treated like a criminal because of how I look. That stop is on video. Most of them aren't. The ones that aren't, those are the ones this task force is for. Back in Coulter County, Pastor James Colton was sitting in his office when a local news crew showed up and asked for a comment. He reached into his desk and pulled out the notebook. The same one, dog-eared, coffee-stained. 3 years of names and dates and dollar amounts written in blue ink. He held it up and said, "I wrote these names down because I wanted somebody to read them someday. I didn't think the person who'd read them would be the director of the FBI." He paused, looked down at the pages. "But I'll tell you what, I'm glad it was him. I just wish it didn't take someone like him for anyone to care." The last image. Dashcam footage of the Coulter County Highway. Same stretch of road, same flat fields, same sky. But at the county line there's a new sign. Small, metal, bolted to a post next to the speed limit marker. Coulter County Sheriff's Office, committed to fair and constitutional policing. The camera holds on it for a long time, long enough for you to wonder whether a sign changes anything, long enough for you to decide for yourself. So here's what I want to leave you with. This story ended with accountability, with restitution, with reform, real consequences. A man went to prison. Victims got their money back. A law was passed. That happened. But it only happened because the person in that car turned out to be someone the system could not afford to ignore. What about the Denise Whitmores, the Earl Suttons, the Marcus Greens? The people in Pastor Colton's notebook who didn't have a title or a Senate confirmation or 35,000 agents waiting for their phone call. What happens to them? That's not a story question, that's a real one. And I don't have the answer. But maybe you do. So tell me in the comments, should civil forfeiture require a criminal conviction before the government gets to keep your money? Should a badge be enough to take everything someone has on the side of a highway? Where's the line? Drop your answer below. If this story made you think, or made you angry, or made you feel something you weren't expecting, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're new here, subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. Stories where the truth hits harder than fiction. I'll see you in the next one.
"51 months in federal prison. $189,000 paid back. Craig Hollister booked, printed, gone, but stay with me because this story isn't really about Hollister. Byron Davis got justice because he was the director of the FBI. 35,000 agents picked up when he called. Denise Whitmore, a nurse, $1,400, her mother's rent, gone. Earl Sutton, 34 years at UPS, gone. Marcus Green, 24, lost a whole semester of college. 3 years. Pastor Cotton wrote their names in a notebook. The letters came back stamped, received. That's it. The system didn't break that day in June. It worked exactly the way it had worked for 14 years. The only thing that changed was who was sitting in the car, and that's what I can't stop thinking about. How many people have to carry a title before they're allowed to carry justice? How many notebooks are sitting in how many drawers, still waiting for someone to open them? If luck is what it takes to be heard, what does that say about the rest of us?